Okay, here's something to think about. What if the very essence of the lone honorable warrior, clad in iconic armor, navigating a galaxy of challenges like the Mandalorian? What if we could transplant that, not just thematically, but with actual playable mechanics, into Dungeons & Dragons?
Could we really bring that specific gritty code and that resourceful spirit into, say, the Forgotten Realms?
Big question, right?
It's funny you ask. Just last week, I was running a session. My players were tracking this wanted sorcerer. He'd been, terrorizing a whole chain of Nostal villages.
Okay.
And the chase, it involved navigating a pretty shady thieves guild, figuring out these cryptic clues he left behind, and finally cornering him in this crumbling lighthouse.
Classic D&D setup.
Totally. But the interesting part was how my group's rogue, who's very much a non-magical character, ended up using a series of, cleverly deployed alchemical things and well-placed caltrops to kind of neutralize the sorcerer's magic advantage.
Yeah, ingenuity over raw power.
Exactly. The cleverness required, the reliance on planning and, non-magical solutions in a high fantasy setting, and also the weight of the decision they had to make to bring him in alive, rather than just ending the threat right there.
That sounds like it really hit some of those core Mandalorian themes.
It did. It really resonated with that sort of calculated approach and the kind of moral weight you see in that show.
Well, that perfectly sets the stage for something I stumbled across recently that I think you'll find pretty fascinating. Over on LitRPG Reads, they featured this homebrew D&D class, the Mandalorian Bounty Hunter.
Oh, interesting. Homebrew can be hit or miss, but...
Right, but what struck me immediately was this didn't feel like just a superficial paint job. It seems like a genuinely thoughtful and mechanically interesting way to actually be that archetype within the D&D rules we know.
So not just flavor text.
Exactly. It promises a way to play a character who's more than just, say, a fighter with a cool helmet, or an artificer who's only focused on magical gadgets. It feels like something distinct.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the design philosophy behind it? What makes it different?
Well, it seems really geared towards players who want that multifaceted experience. Something beyond just mastering combat or slinging spells.
Right, for players looking for depth.
This class seems to offer that mixed tracking skills, strategic combat using unique tools, and a deep dive into role-playing a character bound by a really specific, demanding code of conduct.
So it promises those aha moments where you use the system in a cool new way.
That's the vibe I got.
Yeah.
It suggests real player satisfaction comes from using familiar D&D systems innovatively to achieve something that feels really distinct.
Okay, let's get into it. How does it handle the iconic gear? The armor, the gadgets?
Right. Let's start there because it's definitely a departure from the usual D&D equipment loop. Instead of hoping a dragon drops a +3 plate mail, the Mandalorian starts with basic Beskar armor, just a chest plate and helmet initially.
Just the essentials.
Yeah. And then they progressively earn and integrate modular components and specialized gadgets over time. It's like their reputation and abilities are literally forged through their actions and experiences.
So the gear progression is tied to character development, not just random treasure tables.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from random loot to, deliberate effort and achievement. It encourages players to engage with the world more proactively because their power isn't just found, it's earned through what they do and how they stick to their code.
That's a really interesting way to handle it. So the gradual acquisition of upgrades, like maybe starting with a wrist grapple early on.
Yeah, that's an example they give. Early upgrades like that, and then moving towards more advanced stuff later, maybe a jetpack, maybe integrated dart launchers.
That provides not just a tangible sense of character growth, but also allows for real personalization, right? Your Beskar and your gadgets become a visual and mechanical story of your character's history.
A record of the challenges they've overcome. It's a lot more meaningful than just finding another +1 sword. It feels like a testament to their specific journey.
Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned their journey. How does the bounty hunting aspect actually work mechanically?
So there's this bounty contract mechanic, which seems like a really smart way to weave the narrative right into the gameplay loop. Each session, or maybe each story arc, the Mandalorian selects a target.
A specific bounty.
Right. And as they successfully identify, locate, and then subdue that target, notice it's often subdue, not necessarily kill, they unlock increasingly potent benefits tied to that success.
So it's not just about the combat payoff, it's about the whole process.
Precisely. It's about pursuing specific objectives. And those pursuits have tangible mechanical rewards that build up over time.
How does that tie into a campaign structure? It sounds like it could give the character a really clear focus.
It does. It means their encounters aren't just random fights. They're focus missions with escalating rewards that directly enhance the Mandalorian's abilities.
Can you give an example of those rewards?
Sure. The article mentioned things like improved tracking abilities in difficult terrain, or maybe getting better information gathering skills within cities after successfully navigating urban bounties.
Okay, so it provides both strategic advantages in gameplay and reinforces their role as this skilled professional tracker and hunter. It's about gathering intelligence and using it effectively.
Exactly. But what seems to be the real core, the soul of this class, is the honor system, adhering to the Mandalorian code.
Right, the creed.
And this isn't just flavor text to make the class sound cool. It appears to have genuine in-game weight. It influences choices, it influences outcomes.
That's crucial. So it's not just an alignment suggestion, it's baked into the mechanics.
That's what it seems like. The article really emphasizes that this code principles like, never removing your helmet in front of others, honoring your contract strictly, unwavering loyalty to your clan, it serves as a fundamental pillar.
And there are mechanical consequences, boons and drawbacks.
Yeah, there are clear indications of mechanical advantages for upholding the tenets, and presumably negative fallout if you violate them. It pushes beyond a simple alignment, like lawful good or whatever, and gets into this rich set of specific values and traditions.
For someone looking for more than just hitting things, this offers a framework for making complex moral and ethical calls within the game. It forces you to think about your obligations, not just your abilities.
They even lay out some specific principles in the article. Things like, never abandon a foundling, speak only truth, defend the weak, honor your word. It paints a really vivid picture of this culture with a demanding ethical framework.
So how does that play out in a typical D&D scenario, let's say the classic rescue the princess from the Dragon Quest? How would a Mandalorian bound by this code approach that differently?
That's where it gets interesting, right? Their approach wouldn't necessarily be the same as a paladin or a treasure-hungry rogue. They'd likely assess it through the lens of their code.
Like, is there a contract? What are the terms?
Exactly. Are there innocents in danger? Does rescuing the princess conflict with another core principle, like, what if she's technically a foundling they're sworn to protect, but the contract says bring her back no matter what?
So it leads to nuanced decisions, not just good versus evil. It's about balancing potentially conflicting parts of their own code against the mission parameters. That could create some really compelling story moments.
Definitely. So with this unique blend of skills and this rigid code, how does the Mandalorian Bounty Hunter actually fit into a standard D&D party? We know where rangers, fighters, artificers typically sit. Where's the Mandalorian's niche?
Well, the article positions them as these elegantly dangerous in-betweeners. They're not inherently tied to the wilderness like a ranger, they're not purely focused on brute force like a fighter, and while they use gadgets, it's presented as more grounded, less overtly magical than an artificer.
That adaptability is key.
Seems like it. Their strength is in being able to track a target across diverse terrains and then using calculated tactics and maybe surprising gadgets at just the right moment. They might not outdamage a specialized fighter in a stand-up fight.
But they might be the reason the party found the fighter's target in the first place.
Exactly. Or their gadgets could provide crucial battlefield control or a way past an obstacle no one else could handle. They're the resourceful problem solvers. Good for solo recon, but also valuable support in a team.
Okay, let's dig deeper into those gadgets then. The article says they aren't just disposable tools, they can become almost like a character in its own right.
Yeah, that suggests they're pretty integral. The jetpack, for instance, it's not just about flight. Think tactically. Getting high ground instantly, bypassing obstacles, making unexpected flanking attacks, or even just a quick escape.
Right, tactical repositioning. What about offensive gadgets?
They mention a wrist flamethrower.
Yeah.
That offers area denial, fleshing out enemies from cover.
Yeah.
It adds a layer of strategic control beyond just direct attacks.
And even something simple like a grappling line.
Even that becomes a tool for enhanced mobility, sure, but also maybe disarming traps or enemies from a distance, manipulating objects in the environment. Lots of creative potential there.
And the tracking fob. That sounds very specific to the bounty hunter role.
Yeah, imagine the gameplay loop. Gathering clues, maybe struggling to find the target, and then the tracking fob finally activates, leading you right to them. That could be a really satisfying moment, mechanically reinforcing the fantasy.
Okay, and then there's subclasses. Paths of the Creed, chosen at level 3. This seems like the point where you really specialize.
Precisely. This is where players can truly define their specific Mandalorian identity. There are 3 paths mentioned: the path of the Enforcer, the path of the Stalker, and the path of the Guardian.
Let's break those down. What's the Enforcer about?
The Enforcer leans into heavy weaponry, intimidation. Think bigger guns, maybe special gadgets like a blast gauntlet or shockwave grenades. More direct, forceful approach. Ruthless, perhaps?
Makes sense. And the Stalker?
Stalker is all about stealth, traps, cunning. They get things like a cloaking field, maybe remote mines, more suited for espionage, infiltration, the lone wolf style of operating.
And the Guardian?
Guardian focuses on defense, protecting allies. They might get an energy shield gadget or something like a clan banner beacon that buffs nearby allies. This path emphasizes loyalty, sacrifice, upholding clan traditions.
So the subclass choice isn't just mechanics. It heavily influences your role-playing and how you interact with the party and the world.
Absolutely. It profoundly shapes the character's narrative arc and their function within the group.
Now, for the Dungeon Masters listening, maybe they're thinking, okay, this sounds cool, but how do I actually fit this into my classic fantasy campaign? Isn't it too sci-fi?
That's a fair question. The key, according to the article, is adaptation. You adapt the concepts, not necessarily the literal sci-fi visual.
So reskinning, essentially.
More like reflavoring with intent. Beskar armor could be masterwork plate crafted from a rare, maybe magically resistant ore, etched with protective runes. Gadgets become arcano-mechanical devices, powered by magic crystals or rare alchemy.
Like an artificer, but maybe less overtly magical?
Sort of. A tracking fob could be an enchanted amulet attuned to the target's life force. A jetpack might be an enchanted harness granting limited, controlled bursts of flight. It's about finding fantasy equivalents that capture the function and feel.
And the creed itself.
You could frame the Mandalorian creed as, say, the code of a long-lost order of knights, or a specific warrior tradition from a remote mountain clan within your fantasy world. Something ancient and honorable that helps it feel organic.
That makes perfect sense. Find the fantasy parallel. The article also mentions potential allies and enemies, rival clans, helpful crafters, shady groups. How do these NPCs fit in?
They create that rich web of relationships that drive story. A Mandalorian strict code could put them at odds with, say, the local thieves guild, but their skills might make them invaluable to a besieged town.
And rival clans.
Rival clans introduce internal politics, maybe conflicting interpretations of the creed, potential betrayals, or uneasy alliances. Encounters with people who understand, or misunderstand, their traditions can lead to really compelling role-playing.
It sounds like it builds a lot of story hooks right into the class structure.
It really does, and the sample bounties mentioned aren't just go kill 10 goblins.
Right, they emphasize that. What kind of variety did they suggest?
Well, there were physical challenges, like tracking a werewolf through haunted forest or retrieving an artifact from a dragon's lair, but also moral dilemmas, maybe protecting a fugitive child who technically has a bounty on their head.
Oh, that puts the code to the test.
Exactly. Or intrigue-based quests, like infiltrating a noble's court to expose a conspiracy, and quests that might require unconventional solutions, negotiation, clever gadget use, maybe a perfectly timed trick shot instead of a big battle.
It reinforces that idea that being a Mandalorian isn't just about being tough, it's about being smart, resourceful, and maybe making hard choices.
Yeah, the mark of a true Mandalorian, as they put it, goes beyond just kills. It's about the methods, the adherence to the code, the legacy they build.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway? What makes this homebrew class concept stand out?
I think it's that fusion. It takes the really cool, resonant themes and aesthetics of the Mandalorian, the honor, the gadgets, the lone warrior vibe, and blends them pretty seamlessly with solid D&D mechanics.
It offers a distinct playstyle.
Right. A playstyle that mixes tactical depth, especially with the gadgets and bounty system, with genuinely rich role-playing opportunities centered around that unique code of honor.
And it sounds like it could fit well within a party without overshadowing other classes.
It feels balanced in that way, offering unique capabilities without just being a better fighter or ranger. It seems like it could be a real narrative keystone, driving personal stories and influencing the party's journey in interesting ways.
It definitely sounds like a fantastic way to inject some fresh, exciting elements into a D&D game without totally breaking the fantasy mold.
This is the way.
Indeed. We definitely want to give a massive thank you to LitRPG Reads for featuring this incredibly inventive homebrew class and bringing it to our attention.
And a special shout out to Paul Bello, a fine fellow running that site.
Absolutely. So now we turn the conversation over to you listening. What do you think? Does the idea of bringing the Mandalorian ethos, the code, the gadgets into your D&D campaign excite you? Could it work at your table?
Let us know. Head down to the comments and share your thoughts. We're really curious to hear your take on this.